Hey kids, it's Papa. Are you ready to explore the Bible? All right, great. Well, we're going to take a look in First Kings chapter 5. First Kings chapter 5. Now, Solomon had, he was wise. He knew a lot of things. He had information, but he was also wise. But he wasn't wise enough to follow God all of his life. But in any case, let me tell you about some of the things that he did that were wise. One of the things was that he had some good friends. It's good to have good friends, people that lift you up and help you and encourage you. One of his friends was a man by the name of Hiram, and he was the king of Tyre. And that was the kingdom of Lebanon. It was up above Israel. And Hiram had been a good friend of David, had always admired David, his father, Solomon's father. And so when Hiram found out that Solomon had taken over as king, he sent his servants to him and congratulated him. And Solomon wrote back to him and said, "Hey, listen, I've got some projects that I want to get knocked off, and I want to build a house for the Lord. David had wanted to, my father had wanted to, but I'm going to do it. And so would you help me with that?" And you see, they built the temple out of stone on the outside. And the stones were all cut off site, okay, away from where it was going to be built. And then the stones were each one individually moved and put into place. Do you imagine the planning that is required to do that? This was back before the day of computers and all of those things. But the outside of the house was stone. And then the inside of the house, they built with cedars, massive timbers and planks, all of cedar. And I love the way cedar smells, don't you? But in any case, they had the cedar on the inside, and then they were going to cover that over with gold. And everything that you saw in the house was gold or wood. You didn't see any stones. But Solomon needed all of those logs, cedar logs, that he could cut up into planks and beams. And he said, "Hiram, would you help me with that?" And he said, "Yeah, you know, your people know much more about wood than mine do." And he was kind of buttering him up a little bit here. And he says, "I'll tell you what, I will send you food," because that was the thing that Israel was big on. They produced a lot of food. And that's something that Hiram needed to import. He says, "I will send you food. I want you to send me lumber. Matter of fact, I'm going to help you." And so what he did was he took 30,000 men from Israel and he divided them into three groups. And he would send one group of 10,000 up to help Hiram's men cut down the trees and haul the trees down to the Mediterranean Sea and bring them in down the coast in these big log rafts and then carry them in to Jerusalem. And he would send 10,000 men for a month, and then they would come back. And then he would send another 10,000 men, and they would work for a month, and they would come back. And the third, and they would rotate that way. And so that way, nobody was away from their family all the time. And this was a wise thing for Solomon. And we find that he did a lot of things like that. He was well organized. He had 12 men who would take a month each, and they would then be in charge of bringing all of the food to the palace and feeding Solomon and all of his people. And because there were 12 of them, they were kind of in competition and trying to do it better than the others. And Solomon knew that, and he kind of used that to encourage these people to do their best job. And so Solomon built three buildings. Now, he built far more buildings than that, but there were three primary buildings that he built. And you might want to remember these three. The first one was the temple. That was the most important one. He built the temple of God. Secondly, he built his own house, okay, his palace. And thirdly, he built the governmental building. that was called the House of the Cedars of Lebanon. In doing this, he was kind of doing an homage, honoring the king up there. But it was the temple, the palace, and the governmental building. Okay, and this was where he would go and he would sit and he would rule and reign and he would make judgments, and it was a beautiful place. But it's where his throne was. So there's the temple, there's the palace, and then there's a governmental building, and he had these three built, and you'll find that as you study Solomon, he was quite a builder. Now his dad was quite a warrior, but he was a builder. And this was one of the things that I think God liked about him. David was the warrior, but Solomon was the builder. And I think God loved that about him. Anyway, hey, that's it for today. I'll let you go. See ya. Bye.